in the Medrash and in the Talmud, there are at least two instances where the different Sderim are dubbed onto words of psukim. Let's see if I'm here. I'll share this. So, I'll make this larger. Does this show? I don't. Okay. Oops. Okay. So, just for as an example, this is the less famous example. Torat Hashem Tmima, זה סדר נשים. עדות השם נאמנה, מחכימת פתי, זה סדר זרעים. שהוא מאמין בחיי העולם וזורע. פקודי השם ישרים, זה סדר מועד. מצוות השם ברא, זה סדר קודשים. יראת השם תורה, זה סדר טהרות. משפטי השם אמת, זה סדר נזקים. So they take this known pasuk, תורת השם תמימה, מסביבת, etc., and they take the words about the wholesomeness of the Torah. The tmima means something that's not cracked or broken, something that is whole. And they say the wholesomeness of Torah, of Torah life, that's Seder Nashim. And it goes very well with the idea of the ability to marry to both to start a family and when a person feels that they reunited with their the half that maybe they lost in the first chapters of Bereshit when we were separated to two sides, and the wholesomeness of man and wife and everything that comes from it. Of course, Seder Nashim covers many parts that are not so wholesome. The Gittin, the Yevamot that comes after a tragedy, and things like that. But the idea here, I think, of Torat Hashem Tmima Zeh Seder Nashim is that in the best life is complex, but when it goes well, Tmima is family life, is marriage, is everything that is discussed in Seder Nashim. The more famous pasuk that is usually used is from Masechet Shabbat. The pasuk is from Yeshayahu, and the dubbing is from Masechet Shabbat. So here's the pasuk from Yeshayahu. ואמונת איתך חוסן ישועות חוכמת ודעת יראת אדוני היא אוצרו. So I just chose one of the translations. Speaking of the foundations of your times, itecha is the times that you live through. Emunat itecha here is translated as foundation. It could also be translated as faith, and a rich store of salvation and wisdom and knowledge. A fear of the Lord is the key to this treasure. When you read commentaries on this pasuk, it seems to say that if you're looking for resilience, if you're looking for something that will stand for many years and throughout your life, the source for that would be wisdom and knowledge and the fear of God. Okay, that will probably be the source of it. Rashi does comment there that let's see if I can see the quote. Because you believed because you believed in Hashem in the different times, meaning hinting to the difficult times, the darker times that you've gone through, and you were expecting salvation, the tzipita liyeshua, that will be your resilience, that will be your strength, that will be what will stand for you, as we say, le'orech yamim. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, I can stop this. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat takes this pasuk and breaks it down just like we previously saw, and it says in the name of Reish Lakish, it says "V'haya emunat itecha chosen yeshot." This pasuk, emunah ze seder zraim. You need faith in order to sow, and that let the seeds rot and believe that something's going to grow from them. Itecha is the Seder Moed, the times of the year. Chosen ze Seder Nashim. Now, chosen is strength, and in more modern Hebrew, it is resilience. Okay, and it so happens that these days, mamash, for the last week, every time in conversation or when you teach something and you speak to people, and you happen to say, "Oh, this week we're finishing Seder Nashim, and you know what it says? It says Chosen the Seder Nashim. Resilience is Seder Nashim." You find crowds, women and men. Say you don't meet that many men these days in Israel. They're all in the front, not all, but many of them are in different fronts. But so I find myself speaking to more women. But it's like this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Resilience is Seder Nashim. And it's when I tried to look up, definitions for resilience, it spoke about the ability to stay put together in times of change, in times of tension, in times of bad news. Uh, it also sometimes, like definitions, dealt with being a source for confidence for people around you, where you give them resilience. And I think I mean, everybody's going through difficult times, and everybody experiences it in different ways. And every society has, the people who feel that they need more help at this point, and, it will come around next time. And so it's not like people are expected to be, rock solid, but resilience is more about uh, agility. I don't know how to pronounce the word, but being able to work with the times with some maybe more flexibility than strength. And that definitely is a strong Seder Nashim virtue. So even if I think at like the historical point of view of the family unit and the history of Am Yisrael and the classic roles that Nashim took all the generations. It's like we used to have this game when we would do bat mitzvah programs, where they would have to put in order all the generations of Rishonim, Achronim, Tanaim, Amorim. We would make a mess of it, and they would have to put it in order. And they would be a little card that in the beginning they would write their names on it, and that, they would figure it out, and they would put that in the end, and whatever. And then we would ask, okay, look at this chain of passing down the Torah through the generations. And they would look, and it would say, okay, so where are the women here? And they'd say, oh, Dvorah, Miriam, Bruria, different names from different daughters of Rashi, people that took part in passing on the Torah. So that's definitely one answer. Another was, hey, here, our names are right here. Yeah, we're doing a Siyum and Kiddushin. Our names is right here. At this point, we're part of the passing on of the Torah, and that's like, we can't describe how meaningful that is. And the third one was a very, very classic answer that at first used to like make people a little bit, it didn't fit in with what they were feeling comfortable with. But then they said, no, this is a major thing. And that is, if we wouldn't set this puzzle on the floor, we would just, stick it on a pole. We would all have to admit that along the generations, the women were the pole. They kept the strength, the resilience, the family, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's, when we feel like the card there that finishes Masechet Kiddushin, that's Baruch Hashem, it's tremendous blessing. But we also know that the classic roles didn't go anywhere. They're now, Baruch Hashem, we have strong partners, in the also in family life and all. And I'm never going to put down men for their role in Jewish history, but that's a strong part of this issue of um, chosen is a Seder Nashim. Beyond that, even if I just like, I started thinking of grandmothers, okay? I stumbled upon a discussion by Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was discussing some halachic issue, and at some point he says to the person who asks him, because he has a lot of questions, he says, "You know why this is allowed? Because that's how my grandmother did it, and my mother did it the same. That's why I'm convinced that it's allowed." Well, and he says, what he's actually saying is the tradition of how to practice true Jewish halachic life was look at your grandmother, look at your mother, and that was a lot of what held up this Chosem Seder Nashim. And I can think of many other stories. Um, I I want to mention just in like the shortest way that it's not only the women themselves and the history, etc., etc. It's also the practice of studying Seder Nashim that is part of our resilience. It's true for all of the Torah. It's true for all of the Talmud. But when I was, these days we were thinking of all kinds of halachic issues that come up, and we were saying, oh, surprise! This general social discussion, I'll mention in a second, that's Seder Nashim, that's in Gittin. And another way to treat it, oh, that's also Seder Nashim, that's in Ketubot. And the fact that we can, and here I'll bring the example, in Gittin, there's this huge discussion about, I mean, it becomes huge over generations, about Pidyon Shvuim, about what a society could or should be able to offer and to negotiate in return for people that were kidnapped. And along the generations, there are many. Unfortunately, there are terrible examples of that. And that discussion, surprise, surprise, is in Masechet Gittin in Seder Nashim, and the ability to discuss and to discuss through Torah is a big deal in the way our society is set and is part of its resilience. The idea that you can think of things, you can discuss different sides of it. You can discuss historical perspective, ethical perspectives, religious perspectives, and sometimes it's even easier to discuss something through the sugya. It's a tiny bit less threatening. And then we have that I mentioned the sugya in Gittin, the sugya in Ketubot, where the same issue comes up, where, and I'm not going to go in depth into that, but there's a discussion between Shmuel the Amora and his father thinks that he said something too lightly, and he regarding women that were kidnapped and that were held as hostages, and he tells him, if those were your daughters, would you say something like that so lightly? And eventually that happens. It's we said it, and it's like somehow the mystical effect of the words, and then we find ourselves discussing this issue of Shmuel's daughters as hostages. And Dafka the point that comes out very, very strongly is you can't make a halachic point, you can't make a halachic discussion if you can't imagine it as if it's your daughters, right? You literally have to wear the clothing of the father of the daughters or of the daughters themselves to imagine yourself in that place, and only then re-enter the halachic and the ethical and the social discussion after you experienced it from the point of view of the person who's asking the halachic question. And of course, the many different considerations, they didn't disappear. There's still something very important to discuss, but at least you went through this process of really, really, really feeling what it means to be in the shoes of the person who's asking the question or whose question is being discussed. And the ability to go through this whole process and discussion, that's a very, very important part of our experience as a society. I think it's part of our resilience as a society. Chosen ze Seder Nashim. Just to end up, I'll try to read and translate a small piece from the Rav Kook. Rav Kook speaks of this quote, Chosen ze Seder Nashim, strength and resilience is Seder Nashim. And he speaks how the basis of family life and everything that is derived from it is the basis and the strength of our nation. And then he ends with the words, "Ve'im izdamnu pra'ot v'ikuvim," and if disturbances, but pra'ot also could mean in modern Hebrew pogroms, okay, and delays will come up for a while. At some point, you won't feel that you're straightforwardly ascending, but there are down backsets and terrible times. העתיד עומד לתקן את הכל. The future will eventually mend everything. והטוב יתגבר ועליית החיים היא נכונה לבוא. And the good will prevail and the ascendance of life will surely come. על פי הדרכה הטהורה שמשך החיים הנמשכים לדור דורים, and he continues according to the pureness and the strength and the sanctity of what is described in Seder Nashim. והם הלימודים אשר בסדר נשים. And this is what we learn from our studies in Seder Nashim. שהם גורמים לעוז ואיתנות שבחיים. That is what gives us the strength and the resilience in our life. חוסן זה סדר נשים.